to the official podcast of DogsDaily.com, a Sports Illustrated channel.
Gets to the edge. Sonny Michel will send the Dogs home to the championship game.
If you're looking for the latest Georgia Bulldog news in football, basketball, baseball, and recruiting, then you're in the right place.
Anthony Edwards with the jam. Are you kidding me?
Hosted by Dogs Daily writers Jeremiah Stoddard, Kyle Funderburk, and Jonathan Williams.
Here's a pitch. Hit high out into right center with some carry. It's got a chance. This ball is out of here. Tucker Bradley has won it.
Just sit back, relax, and prepare yourself for these hot takes you're about to listen to.
Great start to the show, as you can see. All right, we were muted. But anyways, welcome back to another episode of Classic City Sports. As always, Jeremiah Stoddard along with Jonathan Williams. Fun episode coming for you today. We're going to talk about a few different fun topics of everything that's been going on. One, why Georgia's next title will come sooner rather than later. How Kirby Smart has figured out the offensive game plan so far and what he's been able to put together there for future success as well. And then our favorite to do is, King of the Hill. And this time it's going to be around the offensive side of the ball as well. And defensive-minded coaches. Is that still something that should be discussed? Are defenses still going to win championships, or has the tables completely turned to the offensive side of the ball in college football specifically? In the NFL, this is a little different, so we're not going to get into what's going on there. But on the collegiate side of things, how everything is going that way. But I'll kick it over to Jonathan, let you get us started on Georgia's next title run. Why is it sooner rather than later?
Well, I think back in 1980, when Georgia won. Before this year, that was the last time they had won a national championship. And you have to think, in that moment when Georgia won the national championship, I bet you nobody was thinking it'd be another 41 years before Georgia would win another national championship. And so after winning one this year, vibes are high. Everything's good. It's a good morale around the program, as it should be after winning a national championship. And you've had your 2.5 months to indulge in it and really just soak in the glory of being on top of the college football world yet again. But now it's time to turn a new chapter. And players have already started doing it. Players have said that they're ready to move on. That national championship is in the past. They're ready to work towards yet another one. And so it begs the question now of when is the next one going to happen? And I don't think Georgia fans are going to have to worry about it being another 41 years this time before they win another one. And there's a lot of reasons why. And it's purely because Kirby Smart has set up this program for one, longevity, and he's put them in the perfect spot to do so and have a quick turnaround and win yet another one again. There's so many factors that come into play. One of them being is a lot of your key contributors last year were freshmen, or at least young players that had only been around in the program for 2 years, maybe redshirted their first year. Guys like A.D. Mitchell, who really surged on the scene. There's a lot of buzz around him in spring camp right now. Brock Bowers, of course, best tight end in college football right now. Keely Ringo, who's one of your best cornerbacks. He was on number 2 guy beside Darian Kendrick. He's coming back. You got him for 2 more years at least. You got Brock Bowers for 2 more years at least, A.D. Mitchell, so on. So there's a lot of things that are coming to play there in regards to you have a lot of your contributors still on the team. And then also, while the defense is young this year, you lost a lot of guys in the NFL. That they're still really talented. And the fact that they're still young, Kirby Smart doesn't ever have a major drop-off on defense. So the fact that you're going to be really good on defense this year, and the fact that those guys are young, it's just going to be sooner rather than later that those guys get into those veteran roles and they get more experience with them, and they're going to get even better than they are right now. And so when you combine that with the players that you have here right now and the fact that your quarterback room is littered with talent, everywhere. We've said it before on here tons of times. You really can't go wrong with anybody in the quarterback room right now. And it probably doesn't matter necessarily who starts at quarterback because you have so much talent in there. You have a lot of options, and that's a good thing. So when you put all this together, when you combine all of those great things in a football program, those things tell you that you're probably going to be back on top soon again, especially when you throw in things like the East is down bad right now. Florida's not going to be good for probably maybe 2 more years at least. Tennessee Sure, I know people are having high hopes for
they'll be
them
above
up there,
500,
but
sure.
it's kind of one of those things like I'll believe it when I see it, sort of thing. Like, yeah, they were good last year, but I don't know if that defense and offense is going to be able to hold up, especially when their defense just isn't that good. And when you have it, and so it's great to have a great offense, but you got to have a good defense as well. I think Kirby Smart and their team showed that last year, that it's still necessary to have a great defense. So with the East being down bad, and you're going to be in the SEC championship game repetitively, I think at some point you're going to get another crack at it. You're going to be in the playoff again, and it's just a matter of time before Georgia makes yet another run at winning a national title. So it's going to come sooner rather than later for those reasons.
Absolutely is. And to go along with that, like part of why it's going to be not just making to the SEC championship game consistently being a huge deal, it's going to be like that regular season schedule. With the SEC East being down, the odds of them dropping that regular season game are lower than they should be as well. So if they can go through that regular season undefeated like they did last year, going into an SEC championship game against a Bama or whoever might meet them in that game in early December, it doesn't matter if they lose that game. Georgia lost that game this year and looked bad in that game, right? They looked terrible. So some people would try to make the argument that they shouldn't be in there, but they had made the argument of why they were one of the best teams all year long. They had a slip up. I mean, Alabama may have beat them. Alabama lost to Texas A&M earlier in the year. So you got to give them a little bit of credit because of one loss, like everybody else seems to get throughout the year as well. So when you go through a season undefeated, and with the SEC East being the way that it is for the foreseeable future, there's no reason they drop games against those opponents in the next couple of seasons, which means they should be able to get themselves to an SEC championship game undefeated again in the next couple of years, which means at that point,
Easily could be this year.
We will get into the SEC standings like we did like before last season. We'll go through that right before the season starts and place out what rankings we think everybody's going to come in, throughout the league and win losses and stuff like that. But most likely, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, spoiler, I'm probably going to go ahead and say that Georgia's going undefeated in the regular season.
I mean, there's just not any questions.
I don't think there's much of an argument to be made for that because, like you said, Florida's down. They went 6-7 last year. They have a whole new coaching staff. They have a lot of pieces, new pieces on offense and everything like that, and defense as well. They have a lot of rebuilding to do. I'm not saying they won't be good again in the next couple of years because I really doubt you're going to see Florida just be low-level SEC East for several years. I think that they may need a couple more years for Napier to get them back up to a more competitive program. So you've got some time there. Tennessee, I'm with you. I'm not really going to give them a whole lot of credit because of what we saw last year. They put some offense on the board last year, but they really kind of struggled to get that going last year for a little while, right? Like they struggled throughout the season at different times. So you've got to give them some more time to be consistent, put a little bit more on defense. They can score a lot of points on offense, but you do have to have somewhat of a defense to compensate for that. It doesn't matter how high-powered your offense is. If you have no defense to go along with it, you're still going to drop some games. It's going to happen.
Oh, yeah. No, for sure. Absolutely. And there's just a lot of things that come into play, of course, because Kirby Smart's recruiting at an elite level, as he has his entire time here at UGA. And that's why they have the roster that they do right now. When you lose guys, when your tight end roster is as depleted as it is right now for UGA, you still have guys like Oscar Delp and Eric Gilbert still getting reps, and it doesn't really it's still a drop off, of course, when you lose Darnell Washington and Brock Bowers, but it doesn't feel like you just have this gaping hole in your offense right now during a crucial part of the developmental process for Georgia. So the roster is looking good. There's just and especially with like the schedule this year, like we were saying, like go down the list. You can't tell me there's anybody that would scare Georgia going into this year. People are throwing out Oregon right now.
That's going to be overhyped.
I don't believe it. It'll be overhyped just because of everything that surrounds it. Like, Dan Lanning, his first game as Oregon's head coach is coaching against his old boss. Like, that type of morale around the game. Like, of course, that's going to gain attention. And then with Bo Nix and playing Georgia so many times, and he's out there now, like, there's a lot of things that are going to play into that. It's going to be hyped up. It's going to be one of those things where you're going to hear people say, like, oh, I think it's going to happen. I think week 1, Oregon's going to pull off the upset against mighty Georgia, and Georgia's going to start off their first game back from national title on a little bit of a hangover. They're having that national title hangover right now, so they're going to start off with a loss against Oregon. Yeah, you're going to get a lot of that leading up to that game, but still, like, look at the rest of the schedule and everything else around it. There's just nothing that should scare Georgia. I don't think any of these games. It's probably going to look a lot like it did last year, if I'm being honest. Like a lot of blowouts early on. It's a lot of garbage time in the second half. But yeah, so for those reasons and for the foreseeable future, of course, the way that Georgia has Kirby Smart has built his team and the way that UGA is rolling right now, and like it seems like a lot of momentum is going in their favor. I think for all those reasons, Georgia fans have no reason to worry about there being another national title drought. And I think it will be very soon that Georgia or Kirby Smart adds yet another national title to his trophy case for good reason. For good reasons,
absolutely. And on the Oregon side of things, Oregon, they get overhyped every couple years anyways. Like last year, we sat here talking about the article that came out that had them in the Final Four, going into a semifinal game for the college football playoff and everything like that at the beginning of the season with 2 losses at that. Yeah. So that was the funnest. So we sat here and had a good old time talking about that.
I said it from the beginning. I said there ain't no way they're getting in, and sure enough, they didn't. They had a chance though. I mean,
they came close late.
They beat Oregon on the road. I thought maybe for a second they'd be able to slip in, but had their collapse of the second half of the season. But then also, like, what was the major thing about last season for Georgia? Like, what was the biggest thing that they got over?
Getting over the championship hump in general.
What about the other one? Beating Bama. That was was like one of the only things that Georgia proved that they were not able to do, aside from the obvious of winning a national title. It was they haven't proven that they can beat Nick Saban, that they can beat Alabama. You did, and you, like we said, you did both of those things in one game. So now there's nothing surrounding your program as to say what you can't do. You already know what you can do. You already know what you're capable of. The players have seen it. The coaches have seen it. The fans have seen it. There's nothing that's holding you back now, or like the second thought in the back of your mind that it can't happen or something that could keep you from achieving that goal. You know you can do it at this point. So now it's just a matter of replicating what you did last season and doing it again in the upcoming season. So, yeah, it's going to happen. I can guarantee you there will be another national title coming to the city of Athens pretty soon. And there's a big reason why the first one of Kirby Smart's era came back to Athens. And it's because he has proven that he has figured things out on offense. That was one thing that, speaking of things that were holding back Georgia, it seemed like the offense was definitely one of them. Yeah. Offense was just kind of off to a rough start in regards to the Kirby Smart era at UGA. You brought in Jim Chaney as your offensive coordinator, who recently took a analyst job at Georgia Tech today. Kind of weird, go from Georgia OC to now you're an analyst at Georgia Tech. Whew, what a downhill climb.
And he was an analyst for the Aints.
Yeah, the Saints, if you aren't familiar with that. But yes, quite the downhill climb for Jim Chaney. But that was all right. Like the offense was sustainable, I guess you could say. But it definitely wasn't good enough at like the top echelon of college football by any means. And then you go and get Jim Coley. You get him into your OC, and that was just
when you see a guy out after one season, things weren't going well.
Yeah, things clearly weren't working. There wasn't a lot clicking there. But then this is where things really started going for Georgia. And it seems to me this is where Kirby Smart finally figured out what he needed to do. And he goes and gets Todd Monken, a very experienced offensive coordinator in both college football, a guy that has head coaching experience when he was at Southern Miss during his time there, has a lot of offensive coordinating experience at the NFL level. And so this is a guy that is established in the college football and just football business in general. So he goes and gets him. And I think the reason why you bring in a guy like Todd Monken is because you want to kind of show the ropes to not only yourself, but to the rest of your football staff, because it seems like everybody's got to be on the same page. Clearly, there's something that's not clicking within the program of the offense. So why not go and get a guy like Todd Monken, who is very knowledgeable on the offensive side of the football and who understands what a successful offense looks like. And ever since then, Georgia hasn't looked back on the offensive side. They have looked completely different. They kind of revamped that whole side. In regards to quarterback play has looked a lot different. Just kind of the style of offense that they ran. If you remember their first game with Todd Monken as offensive coordinator against Arkansas, they were nonstop, just running play after play. I mean, they were wanting to run like 78 plays per game. Yeah. And Georgia's typically around like the 60.
Yeah, that was crazy.
So it was clear that there was obviously a big change right off the bat, and they kind of dialed it back a little bit later. Kind of realized like, hey, at least for this year, like we can't be doing that. Like that can't be our style. That's not how we're going to have success.
It's not going to be sustainable success throughout the season playing like that kind of thing.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And it's kind of just started like a shift. It was a clear shift in my eyes from when Todd Monken joined the program. It was a sign of things were changing for Georgia's offense.
Yeah, absolutely. And Georgia showed that they could score a good bit of points throughout the season for like on chunk plays, right? Like they became more explosive.
Explosiveness. That was the thing that was missing.
Yeah. They got that explosive type offense. I think that's what they kind of found like as the season progressed as well, getting away from running that many plays to, hey, let's try to hit those chunk plays every few plays and stuff. Like every drive, we're trying to look for that chunk play kind of thing to get down the field quickly, to score quickly. That way we don't have to run that many plays per game. And our defense, as good as it is, will make sure that like our offense gets back on the field pretty quickly as well. Like the defense won't be out there very long. So we don't want our offense out there for an extremely long period of time to only come back on the field really quick afterwards and maybe be tired and not be able to run. So they found a way that it made it work, where they became more explosive. They got the big chunk plays that everyone wanted Georgia to have, right? That's the thing. Last year, if you go ask a lot of fans about last season, most of them will tell you, or at least a large majority of them will tell you, that this season and that championship is basically on the backs of the defense. While they're not entirely wrong, the defense played a massive factor because you're about to see so many guys on that defense get drafted in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have a lot of guys going first round from that defense. So yes, the defense was a massive part of it. That offense still scored 37 points a game.
Yeah.
And that was a bad offense. And whether or not that's because they had short field possessions and stuff like that, that's fine. They still were more explosive offensively as well. I'd have to go back and pull up all the stats of, average chunk plays they got and everything like that. We can do that, in the future and break all of that down as well. But they had plenty of chunk plays to go along with that helpful defense. So the offense is a lot of times shoved under the rug from last year.
Mm-hmm.
In reality, it is the best offense that Georgia has had under Kirby Smart. It really is. And once again, you can try to tie that back to the defense as much as you want, but Georgia's had a top defense every year under Kirby Smart. They've had a top 20 defense since 2017 under Kirby Smart. What was different this year is the offense was top 10. They literally were 8th in offensive production by points this season. That's the big difference in what this team was able to accomplish in the whole season to win that national championship, because their offense stepped up to be on par with that defense this year. That was the big difference.
Yeah, and I think the next question that fans are going to ask, especially after pointing out like that Todd Monken was a big shift in Georgia's offense, was, well, then what happens when Todd Monken leaves? Because it's inevitable. It seemed every offseason there's more and more buzz around Todd Monken leaving. It seems like it's going to happen soon, probably next offseason, that he leaves Georgia. Because you know that by hiring a guy like Todd Monken, that he's probably not going to be sticking around for 5 or 6 years. And so what do you do when that happens? Well, I'll tell you what you do. And Kirby Smart has already figured this out. And you have a guy like Buster Faulkner, who you're already grooming, who you already have studying under a guy like Todd Monken. Like I said before, when I was saying how you bring in a guy like Todd Monken to teach everybody how to run an offense and what a successful offense looks like, that goes with a guy like Buster Faulkner, who everybody raves about on the recruiting show. Anytime you hear a quarterback recruitment tied to someone's name in the UGA staff, it's typically around Buster Faulkner if you're paying attention. And so you're grooming him to kind of take things over, but it also takes more pieces. And what were two of the biggest issues with Georgia's offense, if you had to name some over the past couple of years? Like, what were two big positions that people are like, man, something's not clicking here, something ain't right?
One of the big ones that everyone talks about for obvious reasons has been quarterback, right?
Okay.
That's definitely going to be one of them. My biggest thing in the past couple seasons sometimes has been the offensive line has been a big thing for me. Wide receivers, we had to get some bigger names, some guys actually producing there a lot as well. That's been an interesting side of things on the offensive side. But one thing that a lot of people always said is they never had any production out of tight ends, but they got plenty of production out of tight ends last year.
Interesting you say that, Jeremiah, because what has Georgia done? Oh, they have a guy named Todd Hartley on the coaching staff right now who's gotten guys like Darnell Washington, Brock Bowers, Oscar Delp, Eric Gilbert now on his roster right now. And so the saying used to go that Georgia doesn't use tight ends, and they almost had their freshman tight end win the tight end award this last season. And people are already saying that he'd be a top 5 prospect in this year's draft class as a freshman. Might I remind you?
He closed in on 1,000 yards almost. He was 800.
Almost was your school's first 1,000 yards receiver in quite a long time.
Terrence Edwards.
Yeah. So you have a guy like Todd Hartley, who's a complete dude right now, and he is the best in the business in regards to tight end coaches. And then you also you mentioned wide receivers as well. Georgia had some issues with wide receiver, especially in that season with 2019, where you basically had 2 dudes that you were throwing to, and that was about it. That was about all you had with George Pickens and Lawrence Cager. Well, now you have a guy named Brian McClendon who's on your staff, who is recruiting absolute dudes again at the wide receiver position. And so with all of that said, and not even just having a great offensive coordinator, but you're grooming your next offensive coordinator so that when Todd Monken does step away from the program, you don't miss a beat there because you already have a guy that is prepared to take over that role for Georgia. You have a guy that has been learning and has been studying under a guy like Todd Monken and is ready to be an offensive coordinator at Georgia. And you tie those things in with Todd Hartley, and you tie it in with Brian McClendon, and you tie it in with a stapled guy like Stacey Searles on your offensive line coach. It's figured out. And Del McGee, of course, your running back coaches. Again,
you notice that I'm going back through it. I think I named pretty much every position group except running back because that one's the most consistent one.
I said name 2, and you named the whole depth chart.
Well, I was basically saying so. Often, the biggest one is like everyone focuses on quarterback. That's not my biggest issue necessarily, but that's what a lot of people focus on. So clarify that, like I'm not saying quarterback has been Georgia's biggest issue. It's been an issue at different times, sure.
I probably should have said other than quarterback.
So that was one I'm including. Last year, they did have a lot of trouble with offensive line, recent history. Last year, the thing is, last year they didn't have problems with tight end, but prior years is where they did. So I'd say personally, the positions would be like as a whole for Georgia, the biggest thing has been offensive line and tight end for me. As far as like some improvement needed to be done kind of thing. That would be so tight end fits perfectly into that because like you said, Todd Hartley has really got them on the right track. And it's not that it's like a one and done kind of thing. Like they have Brock Bowers who, like we said, he was about 100 and something yards shy of having 1,000-yard season for the first time in Georgia history since Terrence Edwards. And it would have been by far, he's almost doubled season productions for tight ends at Georgia. Most of them had no more than about 500 or so in a season in the past as well. So you saw that much production. But now you have this. You have Eric Gilbert has just stepped onto campus. He is working with, or he's been on the campus since last year, but he's back with the program now this year, and he's working with tight ends. He is expected to be a tight end at least for the spring. That's what he's working on. So you've got him who absolutely killed it at LSU his freshman year before he came over. He had about 35 catches and 500 yards or something in that range.
Everything that was advertised about him as a high school prospect was shown on the football field at LSU.
It was. And so you've got that production coming now. You still have Darnell Washington, who we believe on the show a lot is a guy that should be, more on the line, a little bit more of the blocking, can still make plays offensively, in the passing game as well. But he is not necessarily going to be your big flash guy like the other ones are. His size will be very beneficial in the red zone and stuff like that when he gets healthy again. But then you have the recruiting side of things. You've got Oscar Delp coming in, right? Mm-hmm. And then Spurlin is Pierce Spurlin in the next class that is set to come to Georgia as well. They are guys. All of the next two guys. So Oscar Delp's on campus now, but Pierce Spurlin is another guy that is advertised to be the way that Brock Bowers has been.
Tight end you? ?
In 5 years, that might be the argument for at least recent history, right? That'll be an argument that's made if these guys come up and produce the way that they're expected to.
It's crazy because, 4 years ago, like I said, there were so many question marks around Georgia's offense, and there's a lot of issues that people had with the way that Kirby Smart ran his offense or the way that people thought that Kirby Smart was telling his offense to be ran. And it was things like you got to get the tight end more involved. You got to get better wide receivers at the position. You just got to be more explosive.
Yeah.
And like I said, that's why you have Todd Monken. That's why Kirby Smart went and got Todd Monken. That's why you have a coach who it is his first year back with Georgia, but Brian McClendon. You get a guy like that so you can continue to recruit elite wide receivers. And that's why you have Todd Hartley on your staff. So you can have those questions put to rest, crush, smash.
Yep.
Don't ever hear them ever again because now you're established, again, that longevity word, and that's what Georgia has on offense right now. So Kirby Smart has figured it out on offense. And it's really to the point of what do you critique on Georgia's football team right now? Because it seems like any question that you've had about Kirby Smart in the past, any type of question that people have started pinning around Georgia's program, it seems Kirby Smart has seemed to
Dean, I see your comment. I'd see your comment.
Yeah, Dean is telling us not to forget about the multi-sport athlete Rylan Goode. I don't know how to pronounce it. I hate that I butchered it. I'm sorry, Ryland, if you are somehow listening to this. I'm sorry I butchered your name. But yes, we do have a multi-sport athlete on Georgia's football team with him. He plays both baseball and football as well. And you actually have another.
I was about to say that, yeah.
You're having another
Brandon
player.
Jernigan.
Yep, who is going to also be giving football a try. He played in high school. He's actually really good. If you actually saw his highlights,
He's fast
on Twitter, very fast.
Speed.
Played quarterback in high school. Just a really good
receiver. He's listed as a wide receiver on Georgia's football roster right now.
Yeah, so just a great athlete. So another name that could possibly just kind of come out of nowhere, come out of thin air. People don't necessarily expect it. Just never know what could happen with those type of things. So, yes.
You'll see how that plays out.
We'll give our respects to him, Dean. We are very sorry for skipping over that.
I'll connect one other thing to this conversation as well. When you start talking about Todd Monken, and Kirby Smart was like, hey, there's some changes that are needed to be done, right? So he went out and got Todd Monken. Todd Monken is going into his third season at Georgia, which is a rarity for him. 3 years is about the max, and I don't see him being here a fourth year, as long as something that comes
as
up
close
that he's
as he was
for.
to leaving this year.
I don't see him
It's going to be
staying
tough to
again.
keep him around.
But you get him at this point. NFL hires and stuff have all kind of cycled through, which is what the biggest concern for him was, him leaving to go to the NFL.
Which
right?
means he also probably turned down some jobs as well
to
stay here, which says a lot about your program as well.
He probably did. So I think Georgia has survived that first wave of it. I don't think they survive next year on that, just because that's his MO says he's going to leave. After 3 years, is the
his
max.
track record,
His max time at a place is about 3 years. So I think you're going to run that course just based on what he does. So, but think back to what Georgia has done on the defensive side of things, right? Think back at like Kirby Smart has been able to develop these coaches and stuff under him to become what they've been able to do, right? So Dan Lanning started on the staff before he became the defensive coordinator, and he is now a head coach somewhere else. You've got Glenn Schumann and now Coach Boom, Will Muschamp on the defensive side now, helping teach the defensive side even more, and have like Schumann's also learned from those other guys. So history says that he likes to basically mold those guys because of the experience and stuff they have other places to be able to mold them. So like you're saying, Todd Monken is teaching those guys everything, and I genuinely believe that they will be able to absorb all of this stuff. And when somebody else has to take over the offensive side, I think it's an internal hire. I think it's something that you see, and then they'll be able to replicate, and basically they'll know what Todd Monken's been doing. No, they may not be able to be like the wizard with play design perfectly, because that's a gift that not everybody perfectly has, but they'll be able to model their game and their coaching after Todd Monken, since they've been able to spend 3 years with him. Think about like Todd Hartley, somebody like that. He's been here for a while. He's been under this guy the entire time. So you expect him to get the chance to maybe, do something down the road, and you expect him to be able to absorb that type of information to continue the success that Georgia's been able to have under Todd Monken. I don't think that you see a massive drop-off after Todd Monken leaves, just because the history says Kirby Smart helps those other coaches develop underneath whoever is in charge at the time. That's what you expect from Georgia at this point.
Yeah, and this whole scenario plays across the entire football team. Like you mentioned on the defensive side, is something else that should be mentioned is we know that Kirby Smart runs the defensive back room. We know that Will Muschamp has a heavy hand in that defensive back room. And so when you do have to hire a defensive backs coach like you did this last offseason, you go and get a guy like Fran Brown, who Kirby Smart, as mentioned, has great charisma. He's a really high-energy guy, and he's great at building relationships. And that's really valuable to have at that position, because what is Kirby Smart and Will Muschamp probably doing to those players? They're probably dogging them out, chewing them out, cussing at them, shouting at them, hard-nosed coaches. I mean, probably the best two in the business at coaching up DBs is on those guys nonstop at practice. So it's important to have a guy like Fran Brown in there.
Players coach.
Yeah, who could just pull him aside and be like, hey, baby, you're good. You just keep doing your thing out there. We're all right. You just got to listen to coach, apply that to the field, and you're all right. You're a great football player, reminding them that they belong on that football field, and don't let them start building up this head case for themselves of that, man, I just can't do anything right, it seems like.
And just remind them that iron sharpens iron kind of thing, right? Those coaches are being hard on you because they know – here's the thing. They're doing that because they know what you can be, and they're trying to get you to your max and your highest level that you can be. And so as long as you can fight through that, having a coach like that help you get through that side of like the rough side of it, that'll help them be able to survive it.
He's found a balance. I think that's the perfect word for what Kirby Smart has found and built on his coaching staff over the years. He's been a quick learner in regards to a lot of things, and it typically only takes one mess up for him to kind of learn, okay, how do I fix that? What do I need to do differently? Yeah. He's learned on the fly really quickly. He's done a great job for his first head coaching gig. You got to remember, not a lot of people probably last this long at their first head coaching gig with a school. And so it's pretty remarkable in regards to what Kirby has done at the University of Georgia, nonetheless win a national championship. in your first head coaching gig at your school. So done a lot of great things. He's learned a lot and he's applied them, and he's shown growth, and he's shown that he's able to learn, and he's not just a stone-headed SOB that a lot of people probably think he is. So he's found balance, he's found longevity, and he's got Georgia in the perfect position. And we tie it all back together. This is the great part about these two segments. And we tie it all back together, all these things of coaches that you have on offense. When you add a guy like Todd Monken, and you have guys like Fran Brown on your staff, and you're able to add great additions to your coaching staff, along with the great players that you have on offense and defense, is it makes you able to make a national title run every single year. And it allows you to be able to have a quick turnaround and make your next title happen sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. And the other side that goes with it that we didn't mention because it wasn't on topic necessarily is the other side of why Georgia is set up for success on this is the recruiting has been consistent, right? So two things about it. One, the recruiting has been top 5 every year, every single year, right? You have 5-star after 5-star. What's the head coach's name? Shane Beamer at South Carolina. They have about 1 million 5-stars out there. They're not doing anything crazy schematically, something that I haven't seen before. They just have the dudes out there.
They're just better.
When you have those guys out there consistently, and they're stacked, you've got those guys sitting behind other guys like that, right? So, and the way Georgia really, really has helped themselves is getting those guys on the field that are behind them a lot. You see Georgia's defense rotate a good bit, especially at the defensive line position. They see those guys rotate in and out a lot over the past couple seasons. You see different DBs go in and out at different times. So younger guys have been able to get experience behind them in games and different things like that at different times to help them build that experience. Even though they haven't started and haven't played that much, they get a little bit of SEC experience here and there just because they get cycled in and out occasionally. The other side of things is think about like this spring, right? Like we're talking about all the injuries and different things of Georgia's offense or defense right now, the players that are hurt. That just gives a younger guy the opportunity to get more reps with the ones to really be able to develop. And so in the season, if something comes up, there's somebody's going to get hurt in the season. Every year you have somebody get injured at some point in time. You're going to need somebody to step up.
Yeah.
That's why Georgia did that so well this past season. They had guys go down. They put new guys in that were able to, they may have had a little bit of bumps here and there, but they were able to smooth it out as the season went along because they had been getting more experience with the ones at different times throughout spring and different things like that, right? What helped Georgia last year was, one, you had different guys get hurt in spring, wide receiver wise and stuff. So you got to see A.D. Mitchell have a chance to go off. He ended up being one of the biggest players on Georgia's offense last year. And a lot of that, I have to say, had to come from his ability to play with the ones and show off because of injuries to George Pickens and other players that weren't on the roster at the time. That really helped, right? That's how you continue to be successful throughout the next couple of years as well. That this season, think about Brock Bowers. He got his chance last year because of an injury, right? He got his chance to have a good spring because of injury. This year, he's out with injury. So guess what? Now the next guys get the chance to do the same. You get Eric Gilbert has the chance to get more reps. That they don't have to split stuff between the two of them this time. You have Oscar Delp who gets more time as a freshman, a true freshman, just like Bowers did last year, where he's going to get more time with the ones and twos this year now in spring to really see what he can grasp. And maybe you have a big player come early, fall next season or this season that you weren't going to be able to have unless you had the chance to get them on the field more.
Man, I'll tell you what, if I'm an opposing team that is facing up against Georgia and was recruiting against Georgia and is having to play against them, I'm just shaking in my boots right now and I'm getting very little sleep because there's a lot. And for one reason, if you were scared enough of what Kirby Smart was going to be able to do after he won his first national title, it just got even worse for you because, one, you're about to have a flood of athletes be drafted and taken in the first round of the NFL draft and just taken in the draft in general. Guys signing $1 million deals. Boom. 4 of them probably going in the first round.
Guaranteed 3.
So you add
3
that,
locks.
You add that into the mix. And then along with that, you add in you think back and you're like, wait, hold up. That Brock Bowers kid is coming back to Georgia for 2 more years?
2 more years.
That A.D. Mitchell kid is coming back for 2 more years. They still got that Ladd McConkey dude, that little white guy that just gave us hell on the football field. He's coming back too. They got a bulk of their offensive line coming back too. They have a littered quarterback room with Stetson Bennett, Carson Beck, Brock Vandagriff, and Gunnar Stockton now. Man, what do you do about it? I just don't understand. And so the fact that you paired up a national title ring for Kirby Smart with NFL prospects going into the league this year, with the amount of talent that you have coming back on your team. The stars are aligning for UGA to really just turn this into a run and just absolutely start dominating college football right now. And it's already showing up on the recruiting trail. You already got names like Arch Manning coming into town right now. If you get a guy like Arch Manning or Rayola, another quarterback prospect out there, if you start getting those guys, if you start getting those guys on campus and you start getting them saying, hey, Athens looks pretty nice right now, don't you think? How about me and a Manning throwing you the ball? How about you come on over here, bring your buddies with you? We'll have just a huge party in Athens. If I'm coaching or competing against Kirby Smart in Georgia right now, I am scared for my life.
Yeah, it's really hard to negatively recruit Georgia at this point, right? Like negatively recruiting last year and prior years was Georgia hasn't been able to get over that national championship hump. They can't beat Bama. They aren't doing this and that and the other, right? Well, he crushed all of that stuff. So now they can't go in and say that. That's one of the things that everyone liked to use last year was, I mean, yeah, Kirby Smart's got a good team. He can't get you that national title. He's not proven that he can do that. He has a good team, and then they always seem to fall apart late in the season. So he can't get that. Now he's recruiting with the ring on his hand, and he can come back and say, hey, what do they have to say? It doesn't matter what they have to say. I have an answer for it. And I've proven that we can do that. We beat Bama. We've got the national championship. You've got all of these dudes on the roster that you get to play with when you come here. We're going to do it again. Like that's what he gets to say to these guys at this point. There's no more negative recruiting to Georgia at this point. Like what are you going to do to that?
Yeah, there's nothing negative surrounding the program right now, and it's a tough sell to tell someone why you shouldn't go to Georgia right now.
You can ask some Georgia fans if there's negative around the program. They will find a way to say
there's
something.
always something out there. There's always a gray cloud over someone's head or some part of the program.
It's baffled.
Someone always finds it. It's always lingering around.
But it's something to enjoy right now with this program, right? Like It's so good to watch. How can you be upset about anything? Yeah, you can nitpick little things, but it's nitpicking if you have a problem with something.
I'll tell you what's not a gray cloud, though, is King of the Hill. King of the Hill is never a gray cloud. It's always the most fun part, at least the most fun part for me of our show. It's a great segment. I think you guys really enjoy it. The comments always seem to really enjoy it. They get into it. They let their takes fly in the comment section as well. We let them fly all the time, and we're going to keep letting them fly this time around. And we're starting our King of the Hill segment for this episode right now. And as Jeremiah previewed earlier in the episode, we were going with, is a high-powered offense still required to win a national championship in college? Like we said, we're not going to dive into NFL just because that's kind of a different ball game out there. It's a little different, but we're going college, and it's great because Kirby Smart this last year did it with a stout defense. But I think there's also some things that aren't being said enough about that. But I'll throw it to you. What's your take on this like lingering topic that continues to get thrown out?
The continuing topic of it's baffling to me because you look, and now that Georgia has won a national title, I know a lot of people say that this was an anomaly. We posted that. That was the question that I put out on Twitter today was, kind of what he's saying, do you have to have a high-powered offense? And or is the term, defense wins championships still relevant at this point? Or is Georgia's 2021 defense an anomaly, right? That was the question that was presented. And the answer to that part is no. Georgia's defense is not an anomaly because Georgia's defense, like I said, has been top 20 every single season under Kirby Smart. And it's been top 10 quite a few times. Number one defense, I believe, twice under scoring-wise under Kirby Smart. And the last time, think about last year, right? Like in the past couple of seasons, they've been on the brinks of making the playoffs several times in his tenure. They made it twice at this point. They won a national championship. And then there's at least another 1 or 2 years where they're sitting at like 5 at the end of the season, right? So right there on the brinks of it, where they're almost there with having a defensive-minded coach, defensive built team and everything like that. No, I don't think the term, I do think the term still fits. I think defense can still win you championships. I don't think you have to have a high-powered offense in order to win a championship. I don't think that's a requirement. I think you have to have, one side has to be better than the other kind of thing, or just really, really balanced to win it. But I don't think it's one of those things that a defense no longer can win you a national championship in college football because Georgia proved that. They did it with a defensive-led team, but at the same time, like I said, I think something that's overlooked a lot is offensive success that Georgia had this year. I don't think a single person out there is going to tell you that Georgia had a high-powered offense out there outside of maybe us talking about they had a good offense last year. They scored 37 points a game, which was only 2 points less than what Bama put up at 39 points a game, and they came in at number 8 nationally at that, right? Mm-hmm. So offense did play some part in it, but that defense was ridiculous. In 2019, that defense also only gave up, I think, 12 points a game in that season. But the offense only scored 28 points a game. So you need a balance. You got to have an offense that can put something up with it, but your defense can definitely win you a national championship like we saw this year. Because I think like I said, a lot of it comes down to what Georgia did all season defensively last year. And then in the national championship, I don't think there's any question that in the first half, if that defense wasn't playing near as good as it was, they would have struggled to win that game because their defense just absolutely shut Alabama out for almost 3 quarters.
Yeah, I think I'm going to start it off by saying I don't know that you ever see another defense like what you saw from Georgia last year. I mean, we're talking about Jalen Carter coming off the bench for Georgia. Jalen Carter is starting at 99.9% of other college football programs right now, but he sat on the bench behind Devontae Wyatt and Jordan Davis. And you have 4, what looks to be, unless Nakobe Dean falls out of the first round, but you have 4 players that are looking pretty good at being first-round picks all on your defense. And then you have some other guys like Quay Walker. Lewis Seen has kind of been up there in the mix as well. Like, you got a lot of dudes on that defense that a lot of people are raving about for the NFL right now. So I don't know that you'll ever see something like that again on the defensive side of football. I think you'll see some things close to it. I think Kirby Smart's going to put up a product close to that every single year. Like we said, there's never a drop-off with Georgia and their defense because they were with the way that they recruit and the way that they develop their players at a high rate. I just don't know that you'll ever see a drop-off. So I think Kirby Smart will continue to put up a high-valued product on defense every single year. But I don't know that you're ever going to see it at the level because they're putting up numbers close to like the 2012 Alabama defense. And defenses earlier in the year when defense was what your blood ran through for college in regards to college football. Like back then, your defense was your anchor every single time. And this is a different era of football. So to put up those type of numbers in this day and age of college football is something special. So that's mainly why I'm saying I don't know that you ever see something like it again. But I would say that Georgia had a high-powered offense last year. I know Stetson Bennett is the starting quarterback. So say it ain't so, Jonathan. It's not possible with the mailman back there. But there is a reason why Stetson Bennett was the most efficient passer with 20-plus yard throws last year. There was a reason for that. There was a reason why you're chunking the ball like that and why he was so efficient at it. There was a reason why your freshman tight end almost put up 1,000 receiving yards last year. It's because you had a high-powered offense. You were putting up 38 points per game offensively last year. Everybody talks about that defense, but they were putting up points, and they were putting up a lot of them, and they were putting them up in a hurry. I mean, think about how many times Georgia just jumped out on teams. Early in the football game, first half, it was already 28-0, it seemed like. You blink your eyes, and boom, the game's already over, and it's not even halftime yet. And it's like, wave the white flag, mercy rule, something. Like, we just got to get our dudes out of here. It ain't working against this team. These boys got it figured out. So I think Georgia was a high-powered offense last year. And I just think it would happen to be where Georgia's best offense under Kirby Smart and Georgia's best defense under Kirby Smart coincided in one year, and that's what won you a national championship. So I know that people hate to label it, and people refuse, like they put on these lens of seeing Stetson Bennett at 5'11", nothing quarterback back there.
And is generous.
Yeah, but I mean, it was a great offense, and it gets clouded and it gets kind of little wishy-washy when you label like the best defense in history, because that's what the talking is going to be about. That's what the talking has been about in the NFL draft and the NFL combine. It's been about those defensive players, and it's partially because it's Kirby Smart's side of the football, So I don't think that a high-powered offense is required necessarily, because I think that Kirby's I just think every year Georgia's been, even when Georgia didn't have a competitive or a high-powered offense under Kirby Smart, they were still really competitive against really good football teams, including some of Bama's best offenses as well. Even when it was just a Jim Chaney or James Coley offense, they were still really competitive, but it was still kind of like the Achilles heel of their football team. So I don't know that it's required necessarily. I don't think it's required at the rate that people think. I don't think you have to be putting up 45 points every single game. So I don't know that it's required. I don't think this whole thing about you got to be throwing 500 yards and whatnot. And I think that's another reason is that Stetson Bennett wasn't putting up the stats, so it didn't look high powered, but it was. So
yeah, it definitely was. Well, I mean, he still had, a total offense, over 3,000 yards of total offense himself, including his rushing and passing stats. And he put up, we've gone over this before with his statistical side of things, that he'd actually performed a lot better than people like to give him credit for this season as a quarterback for Georgia. So we won't get into all of that side of things right now. But to go along with what you're saying is, I don't think an offense, a elite offense is required in order to win a national championship because Georgia didn't score 40 points in the national championship game. They scored what would be considered a good average offense, 33 points.
The score was what, 9-6 at halftime?
It was 9-6 at halftime. What you don't need an offense that's going to go out there and put 45 points up a game. What you need is an offense that's going to take advantage of the opportunities given to them by the defense, which is what Georgia did all year long, to where they scored. When their defense gave them the ball at the 45, 50-yard line, they put points on the board every time, it felt like, right? They always took advantage of those opportunities. They got those big chunk plays when they mattered. You had in the national championship. Yeah, it's the timing of when they can come through for you, right? Late in this national championship game, like you said, 9-6 at halftime. Offense came through late in that game.
Yeah.
Offense came through. Stetson Bennett came through in that fourth quarter.
It's time to get
those two late touchdowns scored, with Georgia's offense was crucial. That was huge. And you had a 45-yard touchdown pass or whatever it was from Stetson Bennett. That was a beautiful pass. Stuff like that, you need an offense that's going to come through in those moments for you. You don't need an offense that's going to score 45 points a game at the expense of having a defense that's also giving up 30 points a game or something like that.
There's always one play that I go back to, and when I tell people, like, the offense wasn't what you thought it was or what most people probably thought it was, and it's that 3rd and short situation against Alabama late in the national championship game. And any other time, Georgia is probably handing it off to Zamir White or James Cook or whoever, and they're trying to get a first down. But they fake them out, and they throw a screen, and Stetson Bennett barely gets it off, throws it over the fingertips of the Alabama defender, Brock Bowers, touchdown.
It was, 3rd and 2, and then about a 20-yard play.
That's a sign of a high-powered offense. And again, time, and it's not really a deep shot, but it is a shot. It's a timely shot, and it goes back to having a guy like Todd Monken who knows when it's time to make those calls and who has the kahunas to make that call.
That's
in that
what I was going to say.
situation.
If you ever questioned whether or not they trusted Stetson Bennett as well,
That's a perfect scenario.
They trusted Stetson Bennett right there to throw the ball on 3rd and 2 on a short play. And everyone likes to criticize him in the past couple of years for getting balls batted down and being too short behind the line of scrimmage and stuff like that. They threw a screenplay to the tight end where he had to throw it around a defender in order to complete the pass.
They knew he was coming.
Yeah, you knew Will Anderson was coming right there. Yeah. He was coming. I'm not going to say that. He was coming quickly. And he got the ball around him. And so it showed you that he had the confidence in that quarterback to make the play late. And then the Kirby Smart also had the confidence in Todd Monken and everything as well to say, all right, you know what? We're going to be aggressive here. Because in years past, I do think that that's where Kirby Smart had his problems, is he was nervous to make those calls late in the game.
And that goes back to Kirby proving that he has learned from his past mistakes. Everybody said pedal to the metal in regards to when it comes to the second half, don't second guess yourself. That was a sign of Todd Monken not second guessing and Kirby Smart and saying, by God, we're winning this thing right here, right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the offense came through in those moments after the defense had been grinding out, like I said, 9-6 at halftime. Had the defense not been a good defense and given up, think about what they did, in the second quarter in the SEC championship game. If the defense had done something like that, the game would have been over. It would have. So the defense can very well win you a championship because they did this year. Had they not played as well as they did for the first 3 quarters of that game, or at least first half, it was immaculate. Absolutely immaculate. And third quarter, they were a little tired and they, offense started clicking a little bit more for Alabama kind of thing. But that defense definitely helped win you that national championship. So, yes, you can definitely do it. And no, it's not an anomaly for Georgia's defense this year as far as being, having the best defense in college football that season. That's something, once again, in 2019, he had the best scoring defense in, college football, giving up 12 points a game compared to 10 points this year. So it wasn't that big of a difference as far as points per game allowed. But the big difference in the defense this year that makes it one of the best defenses you will ever see in college football and at the University of Georgia was all of those star-studded players that you had. That's what you didn't have in 2019 was a bunch of guys that are going to go first round. You just had a solid unit as a whole that put together a great performance. This year you had Georgia with just absolute dudes at most positions, especially defensive line. Think about it though. Past couple of seasons, you knew who Trayvon Walker was. Last year, would you have told me he was potentially the number 1 overall pick?
No.
Absolutely not. You might not have even thought necessarily first round. But that's because these guys have to sit behind other guys and take over once the next one leaves, right? So he got his chance to step up this year because of some adversity on the team. You had Adam Anderson leaving, so it gave somebody else a little bit more opportunity at the edge rush. Jermaine Johnson left the team. Those guys left, it gave him the opportunity. Now he is looked at as potentially being a top one thing we saw.
The most desirable prospect in the entire draft.
Yeah. He is. And so, but last year you would have said he might not go in the first round. You wouldn't. Actually, most people probably would have said he wouldn't have because of what you had seen from him prior. Quay Walker, the past couple seasons, there was a lot of criticism around him. He put a lot of stuff together lately.
Some worth blocking people on Twitter, right?
Listen, if anybody wants to reach out to Quay Walker and ask why I got blocked on Twitter, I've never interacted with this man one time on Twitter. Don't understand it.
Take the hot takes back a step, Jeremiah.
Listen, right? I've never once come out. I don't even go out and even on here talk bad about Quay Walker a lot or anything like that. We may have said something once or twice about just missing a play. I've never tweeted or interacted with the guy.
It was worthy of hitting the block button, though. We know.
I think I got blocked because of, I'm going to blame it on Brooks Austin. I think I probably interacted with something on there and he just blocked me for it because of Brooks.
Going after the head
I'm going after
now.
Brooks.
Wow.
I think it's his fault. But yeah, if anybody wants to reach out and ask why I'm blocked, that would be a good question to ask. But yes, but my point of it is guys like that really come into their own in the last season, right before they go to the NFL. So those guys on the roster that are going, Jordan Davis, you thought he might go first round last year. That was a question. Last year he could have. Now he's a top 15 potential pick or something like that. So he improved himself this year. But a lot of these guys that are going first round in the past couple of seasons, you probably, like Nakobe Dean, prior to the season, you wouldn't have said first round. Now he's borderline and he was looked at as mid first round. Now I know his measurables and stuff are kind of catching up to him a little bit. And, I think the latest one's showing him right at the end of the first round. So he could slip to the second round. But before last season, you might have said, maybe a third round guy kind of thing. Like my point of it is you don't really know if Georgia's going to be able to put those dudes up again because they've been sitting behind the guys that are going first round. They could very well.
Zion Log is another
guy to watch for. Jalen Carter is a first round pick. He is going to be a first round pick.
And you don't know what Nolan Smith is going to do this season. Like, you don't know if he's going to take that next big step. You don't know what guys like Jamon Dumas Johnson are going to look like. Jalen Walker, like Keely Ringo. Who knows how he's going to improve his game on as the season goes on. 2 more
years.
Christopher Smith might take that next jump this year as well. There's just a lot of William Poole could be a guy that just comes out and has a breakout season, kind of like Channing Tindall did this year. Channing Tindall was a guy who didn't play that much in his football career at Georgia. That's kind of what William Poole is looking at. And now spotlight could be on him where he's out there every single snap. So it's just, you never know. All it takes is one season a lot of the times for the Georgia players, it seems like. And so you don't know how many or how big it is going to be this upcoming season. And again, it just ties back into what we have repeated over this episode of our podcast. But I have said my piece and given my 2 cents on King of the Hill. If you have anything to add, please do so now.
Nothing to add, just to summarize. No, Georgia doesn't have to have an elite offense to win a national championship. This defense can.
I think you got to have both. Like
it's a balance.
Combination. Yeah.
I think on either side, you have to have either a really good offense or a really good defense, and the other one has to be good enough to kind of balance it out. I think there's going to be a balance either way. You can have either side can win you a national championship kind of thing as long as the other side is capable of keeping up that caliber of playing at least good on the other side, considerably,
Absolutely.
Almost great at least kind of thing. That's it. It takes a great overall team to win a national championship. I think
there's
the
that
real
balance word again.
It's balance. It's an overall balanced team that's going to win you a national championship, and that's what Georgia had last year. What people don't want to admit is Georgia did have a great offense, scoring 37 points a game, 8th nationally in that points per game setting. Georgia's defense was obviously unreal, historical, all that good stuff. It's a balanced team that's going to give it to you, but defensive-led teams can very well still win you national championships. I think that's what I'll sign it off on.
All right. Man, we have covered a lot this episode. We had a lot of great topics. I had a lot of fun discussing it. I mean, we went from talking about how quick of a turnaround Georgia will have in regards to winning their next national title to Jeremiah's issues on Twitter and how he needs to hold it back a little bit with those Twitter fingers. So we've got covered a lot. I hope you guys enjoyed all of this content. I hope we did a good job of just putting out what our thoughts are and opinions are. And hopefully we did a good job portraying what we have inside of our minds. But as always, guys, please subscribe on YouTube if you're over here with us. Always helps us out a good bit. Follow us on Twitter. We had a lot of interactions on Twitter today. It was a great time. Had people putting in their comments, liking, retweeting. It's always great to have you guys engage with us, because more times than not, we'll try and engage with you back, or at least it gives us a thought or a good idea of how the consensus of college football fans are thinking on the topics that we're going to put on video for you guys. So do all that good stuff for us. Follow us, like us on all of our social media platforms. And Jeremiah, close us out.
Well, if somehow you hear this, Quay Walker, give me another chance on Twitter. I promise I won't do it again if whatever I did.
He's an okay dude, all right?
But, and everybody else, keep it classy in the Classic City. We will catch you guys next week.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Dogs Daily on Sports Illustrated. Take a second to subscribe, rate, review, and share with your friends and family. Feel free to reach out to the Dogs Daily crew on Twitter with any topics you'd like discussed. You can reach out to Jeremiah at Jeremiah_Stod7, to Kyle at DK Fubderberg, and Jonathan at 22_Jman. Check back next week for a brand new episode. In the meantime, go Dogs.